And we are off. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. We are very excited tonight to have Zaysan back with us. We had him on episode 308. That link is below in the description for anybody that wants to go check that out. It was a fantastic episode. We covered his whole story there. He's written for, well, I thought it was 10 books. It's 12 books now about his incredible contact experiences with the Plejarens. And if you want that full story, that you can go back to episode 308. And I highly encourage everyone to do that and just to hear all of it, the beginning part of it, because what we plan on doing today is diving a little deeper into some of the deeper aspects of the experiences and some of the other side quest stories that you kind of brush over in a lot of your other interviews. But before we get started, I want to remind everyone that tickets are still available for our conference in May, May 12th through the 15th in Grafton, Illinois. And Zaysan is going to be one of the presenters. We are so excited to have him with us. I can't wait to see her talk. And I can't wait to see if, Sam Jess shows up and whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but I know it's going to be incredible. And we're very, very excited and we're very grateful that you agreed to come and speak at our event. And we couldn't be more honored. So, this is a special treat for everyone who hasn't heard this story. I think they'll all appreciate it. And there was one other thing I wanted to say. I think that was it. Oh, just about the conference. Guys, if you are interested in grabbing a ticket, I would do so soon. The lodge itself is sold out, and the town is a small town, so Airbnbs and hotels start booking up as it gets closer to the event. So if you want to come, at least get your lodging or find a place to stay. You can camp on site. Also, if you can't find a hotel or if you just want to camp, because it's an amazing place to camp. And we have 4 day passes, 1 day passes, and if you can't make it in person, grab a live stream pass. The live stream experience is very professional, and it's a great deal, and it includes a replay. So there's plenty of options available if you don't want to miss out on any of the speakers. Journeytotruth.online is where you can find all of that information. Now that that is out of the way, welcome back to the show, Zaysan.
Thanks. Been fun.
Yeah. So let's, okay. So we covered everything. We covered the main part of the story in the first time we had you on episode 308. So I guess there's a lot of things I want to cover, and it's really impossible to stay in order. But something I want to dive into before we actually jump in who the Plejarens are is a little bit of your military background and being a private contractor, and because I think that kind of like builds the foundation for, okay, this guy, if we can understand who you are a little bit, it just adds credibility to the actual experience with these Plejarens, I believe anyway. So maybe we can get into a little bit of your time in the military and what that was like.
Uh, yeah, I've had more jobs than I can count, I think. And I've had a lot of training in other ways. I became Shaolin priest back when I was 33. And then later in years, I became a Shaolin abbot. So that was one thing. And then as far as I was working a ship boat down here where I live now in Fort Myers, and it broke. And so I had to, I looked for a place to sleep, and I went to one of the parks, and I got run out of the park, and the cops suggested I go down to a Greyhound bus, and I could sleep there. And so that's exactly what I did. And then there was a guy that sat down next to me, and he started talking to me and stuff, and asked me if I had any military experience. I said no and everything. And he said, you got a family? And back then I figured, if he's offering a job right now, I'll take it. So I said, yeah, no, I don't have nothing. And then he goes, well, we can train you and you can make a lot of money doing this. And this was back in the 80s. So, it was a long time ago. It was before it really used the word contractor, military contractor. And so anyway, they I met up with them when I was supposed to, and we were getting on a plane, and they didn't tell us anything. And we had this really heavy backpack on us, and must have been 80 pounds or more. And they said, that would have a map on our chest here that we could open up. And once we got to the ground, and it was like, okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then a red light goes on, and then they make everybody get up, and we hook up our static line, which I didn't know what that was. And I'm being totally naive, and I was one of the first ones. And I said, so what are we doing here? Because I'm standing at the door and it's open, right? And he says, if this thing doesn't work, he goes, grab that handle and pull as far out as you possibly can. And I says, okay. And he shoves me off the plane. And that was my introduction. And I think there was around 20 of us or something. I don't even remember, but I think 7 of us made it back to the camp and it started our training. And, it's kind of funny because now years later, I've went back and now I train there. I teach, soldiers that want to be warriors now. So that's where that is.
And then, okay, so what you do now as far as rescuing children, right? And I believe you said you've rescued 3,500 children right now. And what does that mean when you rescue them? Does that mean they're like safe and back, like somewhere home somewhere, or how does that work?
Well, it's kind of strange. A lot of people don't understand that a private citizen can't go out and rescue kids here in the United States. And police even aren't, that is not their initiative. They pass it on to the FBI. If it goes to the FBI, you got to have over 20 kids involved before they'll put it on their list. And
Wow.
so basically it's all legal here in the United States, but we work around it in some ways, like at the border. We got over, I think, 300 kids that were just wandering the desert. And so, and what we did was we took them back to a church there, actually got a hold of us and told us that they could take the kids, right? Some kids. And they even provided buses. It was the first time we had cooperation in what we do. And so we did that. And then uh, mostly we focus on Asia because we can pretty much make up our own rules because everybody's guilty over there. You have, and we focus on the kids that are young, right? The ones 15 maybe, and there's been occasion I think where we've gotten a couple 16-year-olds, but it usually starts out, the youngest has been 4 and the minimum age now is about 6 to 8. And so and they go all in that range. So around 10 years old is the median. What we do is we've worked with, when I set out to do this, I saw the failure of all these other ones. And then I saw there was 2 successful organizations that did incredible work. And both of them got, what do you call it? They made the wrong uh, friends, right? And they took them down. Hollywood was one of them that just, once the lady said she didn't want to, no longer wanted to travel, she'd been away for 2 years. She just wanted to go back to her kids. They ruined her. All these false statements and things. And then there was a way before that, there was an Australian group, the Gray Man, and they did the same thing to them. But so I've managed to understand how to structure the charity so that we never go under. They can only take down factions of it. We have a policy not to kill. We kind of make up our own rules as we go, whatever what it's needed, because you have city officials, you have government officials, you have police departments, and you have gangs, the two of the real large gangs, and then you have small ones or businessmen that run these operations. And so what we do is we go in and we get the kids, we rescue them from the brothels. Usually they're in very poor shape because on average they get like a cup of rice a day. That's in the good ones. And they beaten and they got, cuts and stuff like that. We've had to do surgeries on a few of our kids that we've rescued. And so what we do is we go in and we get them and we've organized with several orphanages there. There are so many fake orphanages and homes there that we do about 6 months worth of checking on them, venting them. And we have about 500 volunteers that watch and monitor both the brothels that we expect to go to and those. And over time, it's kind of funny. Most of the soldiers that have come to us are broken in some way. They've been to the extreme limits in military field, whether it be, regular military or in other ones. And a lot of them have PTSD. And what's amazing is something happens because every one of them that's had PTSD is now free of it. And I think it usually happens after the first or second rescue. And I believe what happens is that they have a clear mission in a sense, and they don't have to kill. And, they replace a really super bad memory with something greater than that, that's just full of love. And so what we do is when we get these kids, we usually have a safe house that we take them to very first, just to make sure they're okay to travel. And that's where we'll have usually a nurse. We usually can't find a doctor to do it, but we'll pay a nurse to come along and examine the kids to see that they're fit to go the rest of the journey to one of these places that we've had. We do background sometimes and see if the parents are worthy of taking them back to. But we keep the history. Usually they sell their kids or they trade their kids or a family member does, and they're usually traded for like some drugs for a couple hits in a few days. Rarely have we ever found any that were worth them going back to. So they end up in these orphanages and they take care of them. And it's amazing what they do for, because we have certain requirements, like they need to know English, they have to have math. And once they get skills while they're in these orphanages, that's one of the other requirements. We've had a few start to, it's been since 2015. And so some of them we call what we call graduate, and they leave with skills, and we set them up for 6 months in that business. And all of them have succeeded so far. We've got around 3,500 kids that we've rescued, and I know where every one of them is. It's not like most of these charities that take them in and then they run out of funds, so they leave and abandon them. After they've robbed them of their culture, we're with them every step of the way. And we also, my team, I have about 200 soldiers, and they have their own schedule and stuff, but we have 24-hour a day security at each one of our orphanages or homes. Big reason for that is because they are considered property by the gangs or the people who had them in the brothel. And so we do whatever we can every step of the way to prevent them even finding them. But if they do, they'll have an issue with our people that are protecting them.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible and sad that it's even that bad, but we know that is a big issue here on this planet. And I think that, well, first of all, are there any like major players, big names involved in this trafficking that everyone would know as far as politicians and stuff that like have you come across that?
Well, sort of, but I can't really talk about that. I mean,
Okay.
that puts a target on us, but there are really big gangs and stuff that would be known over in Asia. And, it's pretty obvious who those two are, but to most people, anybody that looks into it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so it was while I guess you were training or you were, I don't know where you were in the swamp whenever you first ran into the first Sam Just, the Plejarens that
Oh,
we took. So you were, what were you doing training then
yeah, I was
or?
down in Glades and was doing our thing. And a lot of times I'll go for a walk, and they all think I'm crazy going for a walk through the swamps. But to me, it's just incredible because it's rare earth, right? I mean, it's all
Mhm.
natural and things like that. And yeah, there's a lot of scary things out there, but when you just become part of the background. And anyways, yeah. So yeah, I was just cruising around and I come across we're like 100 miles from anything. And I came across this beautiful lady, blue jumpsuit and blonde hair, and she was stuck in the mangroves. And a lot of people don't know what mangroves are, but they're, they act like they have the roots on the outside in a sense. And
Mhm.
so if you step in it, you slip because it's usually in muck, and we call it the suck because you go down to your knee when you step on the ground. Anyway, she's tangled up in it, and I helped her out of it. Long story short, and we built a sort of a trust. And then I still didn't understand what happened because I was like, am I really seeing this? Because none of it fit. And so it was like, oh, a couple, 3 weeks later, I'm walking back out there, and I remember that's where I went. I thought maybe I'd go just check it out. I didn't really want to. And then I thought, yeah, I'll just check it out, see if maybe I was, smelling some wrong things out there or something. And when I went that direction, I found the mound where I had left her, and I was figured I'd look for any tracks, for any panther tracks or anything on there. And as I'm doing that, this blue light just shot down, and I was sucked up in it. So I got abducted. uh, and that was
Wow.
really funny too, because inside there were six of them, and I'm looking at each one of them, and they're all very tall and everything, and they all had the uniform on that like Sam Jess did, and none of them seemed to want to have anything to do with me. And I got down to Sam Jess, and she's like, I go, okay, well, maybe I won't die today. So that's where it all began.
Wow. Yeah, and for those who want to know more about that whole story, go back to episode 308 and watch that. I highly encourage it. So,
Mhm.
I guess let's just tell us from your perspective now, who are the Plejarens? I mean, they're not so different than us from what I've read, But for the audience who hasn't read your books and doesn't know, who are they? Like maybe you can just like give us a deep dive about, where they're from, what you've learned about them, and what your experience has been like.
Well, I think I should start with that. My books are diaries. So, you got to start at the first one. We got to read them in order if you're interested in them. Otherwise, they won't make sense because it shows my evolution too. While I write, because each time I learn something new, it adds to what I've, used to think. And so, they're very tall, most of them, around 7 foot or a little higher. And Sam Jess, she's very short for some reason, and she's like, I think she comes up to about my nose, I guess, and I'm 6'2", but all the rest of them are much taller. Let's see, they got large eyes, very large eyes. But like if I bring them here, or I brought like Sam Jess here, they got some glasses, like sunglasses. People can't see the size of their eye, and so other than that, they pretty much can get along. Their ears are a little taller, and as far as their bodies goes, there's very little difference. I think they have less intestine or something like that, and then they also they excrete oils from their or waste from their skin. Although I've never been able to feel it, I don't smell anything, so but for everything else, you would never know. I've walked her through fireworks where we had fireworks going on. I've taken her to bike shows and other things, and no one even paid any attention, other than they're all very good looking.
Wow. So, okay, let's talk about the actual physicality of your contact. So this isn't just like you're meditating and like getting some communication. You're either going on their ship or she's literally, or maybe more, maybe not just her, but more of them are actually coming here and
Yeah,
walking around with you right here in the streets. And you've taken them to places. And maybe you can
yeah,
tell us a little bit what that's like. And also, I would like to get into like who they are as a people and where they come from too.
yeah. They're it's I mean, it's almost impossible to tell them apart, right? And they, for the longest time I think it was in 2022 or just before 2022 is when this all started for me. And it was like, I'm not seeing a whole lot of difference between them and us other than, some important things. But as far as personality and things like that, one of the difficulties that I had with them was at first, they were basically a lab ship. The captain took the assignment to fly that lab ship because Sam Jess stowed away. She wasn't part of the crew, and she was like always trying to hide and run from her true destiny in a sense. And so it was, I called it an accidental contact, right? Because I ran into him in that way. But um, they were assigned to see if they could connect with me because humans were considered like monsters and we were violent and all those things, which are all true, right? And so it wasn't part of their program to do contact. So in other words, I'm with a bunch of misfits out, away from home in a sense. And we started sharing things, and it got to be so repetitive for me. It was like 16 hours one day. We got stuck on a subject of a man walking down the street without a shirt. They would ask so many questions, and they would never lost interest whatsoever. And it got to me, it was like it drove me absolutely berserk, right? And so I finally told the captain, look, I need a break from all this. And I was getting along with all of them really well because I was adapting to what would be required for me to be there. And so I walked away at that time, and I said, I'll get back with you, sort of thing. And I came home, and I was watching like a sitcom, and um, it was a day or two later, 3 days later. Yeah, 3 days later. And then Sam just materialized. And it was like, it's kind of funny. I start to feel static before they come. And then I know that they're coming, and then they just appear. And so she came in and asked where I've been, what I've been doing, and all this stuff. And so I had her lay down. I don't have any real furniture, I just got a bed. So we're laying in the bed watching this sitcom I was watching. And so she started asking questions in the beginning, what are they doing this and how is this happening? Because it's kind of like a family oriented sitcom. And so it got to the point where I just kept playing it, right? And then she enjoyed it once she understood what was happening. And I played it again and again. And about the third time, each of them about 20 minutes long, she goes, "Why do you just keep playing the same one over?" I said, "Now you know how I feel on the ship for 16 hours, you know?" And so we kind of made a breakthrough in that sense about, I started to introduce like video type things to them. And then they would ask me questions from that. And so that helped us through that part of it. But where else was I going to go with that? Uh, but over a period of time, they just seemed so much like us, and they could speak our language, and it was kind of confusing that I didn't quite understand. You know, these are aliens. They come from space. From way out in the distance and things like that, and they're able to move from one point to another. That's one thing I think they might find interesting, is that when they move, what they do is, like, depending upon how far it is and such, but they'll identify a place in space that they want to be. And by what they do is they have this, like, uh, it's a whole other story about PI, it's personal intelligence in a sense, where they fix that point and measure or identify every frequency that's in that space. And then they just become that space. So there's no, jumping or anything like that. It's just like when I go to the ship, I'll walk in my hallway, they know I'm coming, right? And I'll take one step in the hallway and the next step I'm on the ship. It has to do with frequency and how they move and transport. About, like you said, how far away they are. If you go like to the Pleiades and then go another, that's like 483 light years, I think, and that's another 83 light years, I believe. Beyond that is where the Plejarens planet is.
So, but there's no distance to them. It's a matter of just matching a frequency and you're there.
Yeah.
Like quantum entanglement, essentially.
Well, not like a quantum entanglement. That's kind of what me and Sam Jess are.
Okay.
Because what we are is, they're like, that goes into consciousness and how they explain that to me. And I do what I call homerize a lot of things, because so I can understand it, which we may have talked about this before, but there's a lot more to it now that I understand. But essentially, if you imagine a puzzle board up in space, and on top of that puzzle board is this big lazy boy and this big old guy with white hair and everything in a robe, and he's watching all these television sets, kind of like in the Matrix, that scene, right?
The
Except for,
architect.
yeah. So, like, we perceive our life as physical and here being, and days go by, right? But there's no such thing as time. It's like Einstein said, time is the clock on the wall. And what it is each of the one of those TV sets is one of our lives. We perceive them as like a past life or something like that, right? Well, there's no past lives and there's no future lives. They're all going on simultaneously. And what happens is your essence, part of your essence, which is up there that hovers by the puzzle board, attaches itself to one of those pieces of the puzzle, right? Which is consciousness. So our essence is on this consciousness, and we're a projection, right? So what this guy's watching on TV is each of our lives that are taking place simultaneously. And each one is like a TV series, right? And when we feel like we have a physical death, that essence and that consciousness returns, if the projection ends, right? So it remains where it is. And now that essence, we never die. So that essence goes into what I call like a museum there. And everybody, when they physically die, they're part of that museum, and you can contact them. Like, for an example, there was a guy I remember doing a ghost hunting show, and he was a long relative of Lizzie Borden. And in that ghost show, he was having a one-on-one conversation with her. And he was hearing her, she was responding to his questions and all these things. What was actually taking place was she's alive, right? And he thought he was talking to her from the past, but in her spirit, but in essence, it was her essence of that life in the museum. Now, and then you got to look at, like, since from the beginning, I only saw that, right? What happened to me and Sam Jess was we were both on two different planes of existence who crossed and merged. So her TV series that was on was merged with my TV series that was on. So now we're on the same show, right? And we are basically the same person, except for I got all the looks and intelligence, and but yeah,
Right.
but
Yeah.
we're very close in that sense because of that. And so what you need to understand about planes of existence, we perceive our planes of existence as being like human, that sort of thing. And
Like
it's
what?
not
Sorry, it
like a
froze up for
human,
us. Okay.
like earth beings and stuff like that, or, other possible possibilities that are similar to that. But the reality of it is that we live on multiple planes of existence, right? And each of those planes of existence has multiple dimensions. Now, a dimension is an aspect of oneself. So in essence, that the plane of existence with a dimension, that each dimension is a life or a projection that's taking place. But then I've learned that we have multiple, I mean, super multiple planes of existence, meaning ethereal, light beings, and so on and so on. But just about anything you can imagine that are all going on at the same time. But we can only perceive, these finite ones, or these few that is in front of us. But in reality is we're so many things at so many places, all at one moment in time.
Yeah, you did a great
Mhm.
job of explaining a very difficult concept.
Mhm.
And I absolutely agree with you. I mean, that we're getting into quantum mechanics and like the many worlds theory and superposition and single position. We have terms to explain this stuff, but your analogies with the TV show makes it a lot easier to understand. Aaron, did you have any questions before we move on? Because this can just
Well,
keep going.
Well, I want to say real quick. So for those of you watching who are big into like UFO lore or ufology, you probably, or ET contactees, you probably know Billy Meyer, who supposedly was contacted by the Plejarens or Plejarens, different pronunciations, and Semjes, or some people will say Semyase, there's different pronunciations for that as well, is supposedly the name of the Plejaran that he was in contact with. So um, there's an interesting parallel there between that and obviously in your story. And I could see how somebody just hearing you for the first time that's never read your books or doesn't really know anything is like, oh, he's just ripping off Billy Meyer's information and claiming it as his own content. Obviously you can see how that would be, somebody could come to that conclusion, but I do not at all think that. I think you're extremely legit and your experiences are real. But um, do you ha do you have any like why do you think there's those two similarities, or do you have any opinions on that, or do you know anything about
I don't
why Billy
compare.
Meyer's stuff parallels
Yeah.
your?
I don't compare my experience with anybody else's. And as
Mhm.
far as that goes, they really didn't want to talk much about it. And they said that happened. He met them and
Mhm.
then they said goodbye. They had two meetings with him. But that's all I know. And I don't, like I said, I don't compare about it. And then I don't push them for things that they don't want to tell me. But
They said
she
that
is
was
related.
them though. They said that was them that contacted Billy Meyer. Or,
No, not them. It
oh, okay.
was her mother by the
It was
same
what?
name. It was her mother, Sam Jess's mother,
Oh,
by the same name.
okay. It was
Yeah.
her mother. Okay.
And I go deep into that into the book, not about the Billy Meyer thing, but about this is only my experience in my relationship with them. And people call a lot of the stuff that I put into my books nuggets because they weren't discovered when I put it in there, and now they are, sort of thing, a lot of things. And then
Mhm.
I explain how to use the consciousness to travel and do different things and speak to certain beings or meet people. That's all included in my book, the processes. And I've got a group of people I've known for many years, and they're having these experiences with them, which is really amazing. That's things have taken place.
Mhm.
But uh, anyways, I'm not into that, so don't ask for that
Okay.
Right.
by other people.
Yeah, I
But
just wanted to I
anyway,
just wanted to kind
yeah,
of clear that up for,
yeah.
I can just imagine there's a bunch of people being like, wait a second, same name, what's going on
Well,
here?
there is so much, right, in content in my books. I can't stop writing because there's so much information, and people are interested in it. And all the money goes to my quest. So it pays for all our rescues and surgeries for the kids and stuff, and which is kind of funny. It's a very dark subject, right? And trying to raise money for it. I'm just not that kind of guy that asks for money, and I'm very bad at it. And so it was kind of funny when I wrote the first book and I put it on Amazon for my friends. I thought, oh man, I said, how's this going to look? Somebody running the charity, the best in the world at what we do, right? And he's talking about aliens. But what's funny is I had so little donations prior to it. Now we do rescues every month because the funds that come in from the books. So
Yeah,
anyways, it's
that's
kind of,
incredible.
It's amazing.
but my experience was so, I had a TV show that I was a producer on with a friend, and it was called UFO AZ, and it was filmed or put in 60 different countries, and it was rather popular. And it was, where was I going with that? Totally lost my mind there. But oh yeah, like all that we interviewed so many people on that show, right? And then you see TV, right? And even like the new government shows, the one the government releases, all those films have been debunked. They're not UFOs, and it's kind of hilarious. And these super experts that did it, and there's no truth out there, right? In that, and then all these people's experiences, they don't compare to mine, and that's why I want to keep this my experience because it's completely different than what I've ever heard before. Well, I've heard a couple of them, but not into the detail that I've put into my
Right.
books.
Well,
Right.
and that's part of the reason I find yours so unique. It's not your ordinary context story, and if you read the books, you know that, or just listen to. Okay, so a few different places I want to go with this. You you were taken to an underwater world, and we kind of brushed over that in the first interview, but we didn't really get into what that underwater world was like. Maybe you could tell the story how you got there, and then tell us a little bit about that world and what you saw right here on not an underwater world. I mean, underwater world on our planet is a city, I guess you could say.
Oh, that one. There's
Yeah.
another one too on
Well,
another planet.
okay. Well, let's talk about both of them then. Let's bring it.
Well, it is kind of fun too because we met these people. Either I call them Vulcans, which is my homerization, right? Because they really reminded me of like Spock and stuff like that. But other than that, there's no similarity, right? But they're they were really nice people, and they were a couple in a sense, a male and a female, and we got along with them really well. The family, I call it family, is the Plejarens that I'm with, and so they took us to their planet and they showed us this. They have like a underwater park, right? In a sense, where people can go there and they can swim and they can meet these or see all the sea fish and everything, kind of like we would have here in a way, but it's a lot deeper than that. It was funny when we got there, I had to stand. Well, we were standing, me and Sam Jess, and these two ladies came to us and they started spraying this stuff on us. And there was like these swimmer goggles, that we put on. And then there was like almost like a gas tank that you would see on a lawnmower or something. That was a little thinner and stuff, but they put it on top of the head and basically just started spraying us, right? With this, I don't know what it was, but it became like a suit, like we would wear a tights, I mean, wetsuit or something, but they were spraying this on us, and this thing I could breathe through it and everything, and I could talk in it. So like they told me that I would be able to speak underwater to my friends and everything, and they could hear me and I could hear them. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And I could stay underwater for like an hour with this. And they said after that, you'll start to feel the suit tighten, and that means it's time to get out, right? So anyways, we're all swimming in there and I'm seeing all this fascinating stuff. And it was pretty similar to Earth, except for the fish were a little bit different and they had these big turtles and stuff. And we got to this one point where we got taken in a sense with these dolphins to this one place. And well, what I call dolphins, they were very similar. And they left us in this deep pocket. And it was very light and everything, but we're down there and we're kind of not understanding what's going on. And then this large dolphin moves in front of us, and it starts making noises towards us. And I could see in the water, it looked like cynetics, that thing where they have the vibrating.
Oh, cymatics. You're talking about,
Yeah,
yeah,
Cymatics.
yeah.
yeah. A lot of people don't know, but it's like that where they take the metal board, put sand on it, and they tones, and they see all these symbols. Well, when it would speak to us or make noise, we would see that in the water, like like it was coming at us, well, like a bubble in a sense. And then I noticed them just started speaking back in tones. And so afterwards, I learned that that was the communication between it and us. And they told me what the conversation was. I forget what it was, but it was like, hi, hey, what's going on, sort of thing. Uh, but I thought that was really interesting. And that was my experience in that one underwater. But
So
there's
you
also
were,
one here.
so do you know what planet that was? I mean, not that it's important, but I'm curious.
I call it the Vulcans planet because it was their
Okay.
home planet.
Okay. So
And it was
you,
out beyond.
go ahead. Sorry.
Directions are really hard to say where something is, other than like I can tell you, the Plejarens planets, you go to the Pleiades and then go beyond that another 83 light years, and that's where the Pleiades system is. But when you're out in space, it's kind of like the ocean, right? Which direction do I go? You don't ask somebody directions out in the ocean unless they got a compass or something. I don't have a internal compass, so yeah,
Right.
it's kind of hard to describe.
So did you go there on a ship or did you phase? Were you just manifest there through?
Oh, we moved to and from just like anywhere. A lot of times we'll take a shuttle down. There was one time when we went to this one colony where it was almost like it reminds me of that movie, something Galaxy comedy.
Galaxy Quest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where they had
Yeah.
that like bubble around them. It was real similar to something like that. And I was shot down to the planet. I've done that too before. But normally, we get in the area and there's pods that I'm an astronaut now, actually. I
Yeah.
got to fly one of
Right.
them. But most of the time it's like a shuttle because there will be a group of us that go down at the same time. And it just, a short distance. So
Well, so okay, let's talk about well, I would like to hear about that colony you were taken to, and then we'll come back to Earth. So what was the colony like?
colonies are incredible. One of the things they don't understand is why we keep trying to go to planets rather than build a colony there so we could come and go as much as we pleased and it wouldn't be near as dangerous. And I know that scientists are thinking in that direction a little bit, but I don't think they fully understand what that is. The colonies, they're different sizes and they're usually long in cylinder. A lot of times they'll be just spherical, right? Like a planet, like they create a planet in a sense, which they do that too. But it's inside you'll see a slight curve depending about how big it is. But it's almost like walking down the street here and you see it on a hill or something. It's kind of like that, but it's massive, and you forget that you're actually inside space and you're not on the ground, on the surface somewhere, because they'll have woods or forests in there. They have waterfalls. They have the areas I call like malls. With there's no monetary thing, so there's no such thing, but they have shops where they give people things or they create things. And then they have like restaurant areas. They got gaming areas, that sort of thing, which is really cool. I had got to experience a couple of those. One you might find really interesting, but there's these girls we call the tourist girls, and they're entertainers in a sense. That's their choice of occupation or what they do. And we went to this place and they had like this big disco floor. And I'm thinking, that's weird, right? I'm in space, modern, and we don't even see those around here anymore. But it was way different, right? I see all these people down there and they're like all professional dancers. And it comes to a point where they say, hey, we'll go down there. And I go, I don't dance. I said, let me do kung fu or forms or something like that. I said, fine, but not this. I can't dance. And they says, no, don't worry about it. Come with us. So we go down there and we're standing on this thing, and before they start the tones, and what these tourist girls, what I call the tourist girls, there's three of them, they create music and things like that and tones. And so I'm standing in a line with these people, and these tones, they hit or activate certain parts of your mind, or I mean your brain, and it makes you move, right? And so you actually, the music makes you move. And so you're not really in control of it. So I became a professional dancer all of a sudden for a moment, right? I mean, it was really fun, but I've done that. And there's some other stuff too that I've done within the colonies, but the colonies are all self-sufficient too. the water, everything. And I just learned recently how they capture the water out in space and then how they transport it. But they took me into this area where they create their foods, which is these little gray balls. And it's always been kind of funny just by that term, right? But that's what they are. They look like gray balls. And they took me into these places where they showed me how they would grow these plants and everything on the ship. And then as one time, one of my friends, Hans, he tells me to put my hand in the soil. And I put my hand in the soil and I could feel it moving and I pulled it out. It was almost like it was alive. And it actually is. The soil is actually alive. And so they collect this from different planets that have that and mix it with others, and so that's what feeds and creates these little trees that produce these fruits. But that's not all they do. There's a lot more than that. Then they collect their energy is real simple too, which we actually have a patent for that was created about the same time as solar was. And it was kind of comical that Hans was asking me, so why did they choose solar over this other one? And I said, because you can make money with the one. He goes, but solar's so dirty. And because the one that they were showing me how they do it is like when you go to the bank and you got one of those vacuum tube things, that kilo canister, that's what it reminded me of. And he could throw it out the side of the ship and it'd follow the ship. And what it does is collects light. And it only takes about 20 minutes and he brings that back in. And then they compress or the vacuum, the light that's in there. And they get it down to a real small thing. So it's about the size of what you would plug into like a drill or something for a battery. And like he was describing to me that little one thing you could take to like one of these big warehouse stores or whatever, it has all the air conditioners and everything. And just one of those would run that place for over 9 years. And there would be the storms don't interfere with it or anything like that. I asked him, well, how does it really work? And he goes, look at your phone. And my phone was charging, and so, but it's completely, it's safe and it's clean energy and it's free. And there's actually a patent in the US Patent Office. I forget where it was, but you could look it up and see. And then I think Honda now has created an engine that uses that same technology.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
gonna start coming out.
yeah, it's so interesting though. It's like, I mean, that patent, how long ago was it created? And
Probably a long, yeah.
Long
right.
time ago.
So I
We've
mean,
had all this
there's
stuff a long time. It's just been hidden for a long time.
just
Yeah.
so many people in the know, and then you get Elon Musk on Joe Rogan the other day saying, "Oh, there is no advanced propulsion or anti-gravity, whatever." It's like, whatever. But it's funny the dog and pony, the dog and pony show must go on for whatever reason. But it's space or anything isn't what we think it is. Like it's like you're literally you don't got to get in a rocket and shoot yourself up to space. You're talking about walking into your hallway and just manifesting on a ship and like meeting matching that frequency, and it's absolutely incredible. And you're talking about going to other worlds that have aquatic life and turtles and dolphins, things similar to Earth. And I can only imagine that there's portals underwater where those animals are doing the same thing, going from Earth to other planets as well. Which brings me to my point about the civilization you were taken to underwater here on Earth. Can you tell us a little bit about that story and what that civilization was like?
Yeah, it was really interesting. It wasn't there very long or anything, but like everything was, I don't know how you describe it, bio something.
Bioluminescence?
Yeah. The transports that move around down there and everything were with that. It's very deep, where they built this place where they can study and create and do all these things that you couldn't do anywhere else. And, or maybe on another planet, but it was an environment which was needed for them. And how they hollowed out inside the rock walls and then how they fabricated it. They gave us a short tour and stuff where we got to see things and how the plants will actually react to you that are growing and stuff. We went for a swim and we had some similar kind of suit as what we did on the Vulcan planet. But and you'll see like large mammals like the whales and dolphins, but they won't all of them go all the way down. Some of them, but a lot of them will. They create the pressure so that it's, that if we want to, like, if we was tried to do it with the stuff that we have today, we'd never get that to that depth. not even with our best submarines. But they have a way of changing the pressure in that area. And you can see the changes near the surface, right? When you're looking at where like a lot of the fish and stuff, marine life will avoid it, but other ones will use it. And so, it was just fascinating, but
Is
there's
it
not a lot of detail.
is it similar to, there was that one guy that discovered what looked like another ocean in our ocean, like it was like another surface of water. And like he filmed it and then he was killed after he showed the footage. Is it something like that? You're like, it's like another sea within a sea type
Yeah.
of thing?
Yeah, because the pressure stays, in a reasonable level for would be for us, because of the life that they have down there and the life that they want to be down there. There are creatures, many, many creatures on the very bottom, which I've seen too, which is kind of scary. Some of the way a lot of them look, and I've never seen them before. And I tried to look some of them up, and I've never found any that live at the bottom. Well, in this neighborhood, right, what I call a neighborhood, where they live, they don't come into there. Just like, because the pressure's too light for them. They live in a higher pressure area, so they can't exist within that space. So it doesn't change anything in the environment other than in the space that they occupy. So that what you're saying is I haven't thought of it that way before, but yeah, it's absolutely, you're like going into, it's like entering into a hole, right? That goes down and all the pressure is virtually the same and everything all the way to the bottom, where that's not natural in a sense. I mean, they create it through natural process, but the surrounding areas are as it normally would be.
So what kind of people are down there? Are these humans or ETs? I mean, what do they look like?
I call humans 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, right? And so yes, they are, but there's multiple different type of species that I've met, and they were more of an aquatic creature. They can exist outside of there, but not for a very long time. Yeah, but what's unique about that too is bringing that subject up. When we're on the ship, there's other species that will come that don't work within the same environment that the Plejarens do. So there's the way of, they put it like Sam just showed me, right? You don't see it, but she showed me on the screen like how their environment is around them and it stays with them no matter where they go within that environment or within the ship. So they can exist normally as we do, but they're breathing their environment where we're breathing the Plejaran environment.
So essentially, they walk around with a field inside of a field,
Yeah,
like a bubble, and then maintains their environment and their conditions so they can,
and you don't see it.
yeah, and you don't see it. Okay.
Yeah, it's not visible.
Oh, okay. So
See,
can you get close to it?
yeah, you can touch them and everything.
Wow, okay.
I mean, because they'll touch me or I've touched them before. Uh, that's another neat subject. They do a lot of that. They also create life, right? Which is unique. We think of AI, right? As, having like the super mind or whatever. Well, like when I get in a pod, there's this field that goes around it. Like if you look at a UFO, a lot of times what you see is like this cloud around it or plasma like field that goes
Mhm.
around it. What that most likely is what I've seen on like the pod, and it's what I call the PI, personal intelligence. This little life form is assigned to me, right, by name, to know and knows, my physiology and everything else like that, and protects me. So like if I was to take the pod and I do something very dangerous or reckless, it would prevent that from happening. If I jump from one place to another, just like the large ship, if there would be something that would invade that space where I was, moving to the frequency, movement, then it would protect me from that, prevent me from doing that. One time I was following Hans in a pod and I says, well, what if I get too close or something? Because, I'm not used to flying this thing. And like he said, the PI will take care of that for me, or it'll take me to somewhere. Like if he gets too far away from me and I needed to catch up to him or something, I would just tell there's no instruments or anything. You just make hand movements and it learns the hand movements. And so that PI would take me to where he is.
Wow.
So a lot, they do that with, that's how they do the water too. They get the vapor in the, they're like a big cloud out in space, right? It's kind of hard to see, but it's very hazy like sort of thing. And they create this life that actually collects it and then will transport it and protects what's inside. So it's very limited abilities, but it's life that they create rather than like we're doing going the direction of AI. It's kind of the same thing, except for it's actually a life.
It's creating
Yeah.
life, yeah. And it's effectively you're living in harmony with it because there's like this beautiful dance happening, right? Um, really quick, going back to the Earth underwater world. So, was there any particular place on the planet that was, do you know, like a region?
Yeah.
Can you tell us?
I can't really give you the locations, but they're very deep. I'll say that, very deep.
Okay.
Like around the Philippines area there's some very deep ones. Now there are some peoples that live off of Hawaii in a very deep location, but it's not near as deep, but it's very difficult to get to if like we're not going to accidentally run into it, right? So
Mhm.
but they're built within the side of the mountain too, which they use frequency in that sense too. Plus they use the mind.
Now, whenever you get like whenever you were taken there, you were in a craft that heck like didn't even create a splash. I remember you saying that. Like it just
Yeah,
like you just penetrate the water and it doesn't even affect like there's no resistance.
yeah.
And so that's how you got down there and were able to even perceive them.
Yeah, well, it becomes like say they go through a mountain. Some people have seen like UFOs go through mountains. It's because it's that PI, right? It creates that change within everything that's within it to be the same, right? And so it just moves right through it.
Mhm.
And the same with water. When they enter the water, there's never going to be a splash because it becomes that instantly. It forms to that. Me and Hans, we got all excited one time because he had never done this either, but we decided to use one of the ships to fly through the sun. It was equipped for something like that. And it was a complete nothing. I mean, it was just, we didn't feel anything or, it got bright, but we were protected from that and we were in and out of it. And it was like, wow, that was no fun.
So that's fascinating. If so, effectively, for one, the CIA is a declassified document of walking through wall systems, which basically teaches you how you can basically do that yourself if you can, lower or raise your frequency to match whatever wall or door it is you're trying to pass through, you can do it. Like we have documentation that that's possible. So the
On,
fact that what?
on top of how many ET experiencer stories have we heard where the ETs are going themselves are going through walls, the abductees being pulled up through the house, through the walls and the roof, right? They're able to easily, this is just like common thing, just like driving a car to us or something, it's like they're just all the advanced ones at least, they can all do this, it seems like.
Well,
Right.
there's a reason for that, and it's a big subject. And a big part of my book about what's called natural law is
Hmm.
the obeying natural law, and that is where they can't change anything that it wouldn't do itself. It's kind of like dark matter. It's kind of funny, when you start to understand the fabric of space and those sort of things. uh, Dark matter, there's no such thing. But it's like a dumping ground for when a scientist can't figure out and he's being paid to do a project. And he says, well, this part's just dark matter. It's because they can't define it. What it is there'll be like layers, right, of different types of space that are all in one small space. Well, small space to us would be like part of the universe, right? But essentially, what that is space. What we don't understand yet is that space has different mathematics depending where you are in space, and it doesn't really apply much to us because we are so limited on what we think that we can do. And so, what you do is when you have different forms, or like it's like putting oil in one oil and into water and another thing, sort of thing, how they don't really mix. That's what
Mhm.
we claim to be dark space that they don't understand. But let's see, where was we going
Dark
with that?
dark matter, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like the dark matter thing that we just don't understand. what's out there. Now, about being able to walk through walls and that sort of thing, I'm learning a lot now from them about, see, this is the funny thing, was I couldn't find the difference between us and them so much, and how could they figure this stuff out, you know, and that, because they just act like us in a lot of ways. And the reason is that mind, we should be using the mind. The brain is just it's a survival tool, right? And so we're limited to that and our potentials. And they really liked when I used the phrase, when I was kind of trying to describe what it was they were telling me. It's like when Jesus he did this mass healing of all these different people. And at the end, he spoke these words that, you know, you, the people of this earth, can do all that I can do and more.
And more.
And yeah, and that's because we have so much potential, and there are so many things that we don't do because we're stuck in the brain when we forgot to move into the mind. The mind should, because the mind or the brain has to have references. When they get, just like if somebody gets really scared with something, you know, they'll close their eyes and they're gone. And in order to keep that memory, the brain has to fill in the rest of the gap. Well, they use what part of that, which was scared, and complete it with scared, right? And so the reality is that the mind is the one that can send pure references to the brain in order to figure something out and complete a memory. And it's very difficult, just like, yeah, we passed by, but that's in the first episode about becoming naked, right? But in order to do this, you have, like, our brain has, you know, we use our own brain, but we don't use it very effectively. And there's all this space left inside. The key to being able to do all these things that we consider to be magic, like walking through walls or levitation and things like that, the abilities for that is within us by filling all these parts of our brain with love, memories of love, unconditional love. And which is a fun subject, because when you talk to a lot of people, they'll say, I can't think of anything in my life of unconditional love. But all I'll do is say, well, have you ever had a pet? Oh, yeah, right. And so we understand what it is, but we're not familiar with it. And so the key is to just start filling the entire brain with love. And that will allow us to do the things that we thought were magic in the past. It's incredible.
So
Yeah.
you effectively just have to apply love to everything that you're seeing somehow. But it's more than just applying love, like telling yourself to do it. But you have to really drop into your heart and feel that frequency. And like you can try to understand something from that perspective rather than your brain trying to make it make sense, right? Because most of this stuff doesn't make sense, especially the science, you know, what we perceive as science. So, you know, the consciousness creates everything. It's not the other way around. So,
Yeah.
um, and it's a fascinating topic. So the sun isn't a portal. I've heard the
No,
sun is a portal.
no. What do you need a portal for? For when you can just be in another space, right?
Right.
Good point. Because a lot of
Right.
people say that, oh, it's a portal and that the ships go in and out and stuff.
I mean, yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
they've seen,
what is the sun then?
It's this big star, creates all this heat and radiation and gives life to the planet.
Okay.
right.
But it's like a plasma more than not just like, because they say it's a ball of gas, but I've heard that's not really accurate. It's plasma, not really
Well, see,
gas.
this is the thing that I've been learning a lot, that I describe in my books. There's so many things out there that I had never understood before. And when they tell me it, I don't get it, right? It's kind of like love. Love cannot be defined. It's impossible. Every time I would have a revelation, it's like, oh, now I know what love is. And then it would expand again and again and again. And you know, so like I do a journey where we go into the quantum and we're traveling through the quantum, me and Sam Jess. And as we're doing it, we move through things. We'll see like the sacred geometry symbols and stuff like that throughout, and we'll travel along certain ones things of them. Well, like going through the sun, in a sense, is it's not uncommon. There's suns everywhere, millions of them, and so like that. One of the things that we did was travel through it, and how we feel like we're being shrunk down into absolutely nothing. Then we come back out and we're big. Also, we've traveled through like Tauruses or a double Taurus, which really kind of scared us, because as you enter into a Taurus, you know, you're brought down to next to nothing when you get to the center. I mean, this is a long story short, but when you get to that, you're being reassembled in a sense. And so when we got to that point, we thought, well, man, we shouldn't have went into here, because we knew that the next moment that we traveled through the rest of it and came out the other side, that it would reorganize us due to all the probabilities and possibilities that are infinite, that we have changed through our lives. So as we get to that centerpiece, when we come out the other side, we may not even know each other again, and we may be from completely different planes of existence or existing on. And so it was kind of a fear, but we had no choice. But luckily, since we're a quantum entanglement, we came out the other side, and we, was that we were who we were before, just more, and that's the big key about becoming more. From the very beginning, I understood what that meant. I mean, I thought I did, right? But it just has continued through right up till today. These experiences that I have with them, you're just constantly becoming more. It's unbelievable. It's beautiful.
That's absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful. And okay, so how often do you go up there or do they come down here? Is this like weekly, monthly? I mean, what's that frequency?
Well, it's like having a neighbor, right? One that you really get along with. And sometimes they have parties or something like that, or else you just go over and shoot hoops or something with them. It's kind of like that. It's not, there's no defined time or anything. Sometimes I'll come back here. I always want to come back here to catch up on everything. I don't want anything left behind, because I feel I have a sense of duty here. My charity is so important to me, because I'm so good at it, right? Me and my team, and how we've put it together. I can't stop that. I can't walk away from that, and sort of thing. And then I have other duties too. I'm human, right? I'm from here. And so I have responsibilities here, I believe, to myself. And I have friends and all that. So, I'll take care of stuff here, and like, okay, I got the day off tomorrow. And so I either call them or signal them, or else they come to me, right? They'll come in the most awkward times. A lot of times when they show up here, they come unannounced now, in a lot of ways. But also I kind of do the same thing. I just let them know I want to come up, and I'm there. As long as we're within, I think 500 or so light years away, it's instantaneous. Other than that, it has to be sectioned,
Mm,
at least with them.
okay.
Wow. So whenever okay, let's just say they come down, like, is it just like more or less at this point, there's no mission, it's just hanging out.
Yeah, yeah. That I'm kind of like, for a while, I thought maybe I'm just their pet, right? And we went through a lot of stuff in the very beginning. Me becoming naked was one of the most important things. In other words, being able to shed everything about myself and to share with them everything. And so that's what I call being completely naked. I cannot hide anything from them. I cannot lie to them. Everything has to be just straight up, right? And the fears that I went through in the process, I write all in the books and the diaries, because I got to a point where I just was loving these people so much. I didn't want it to ever end. And so I had that problem, like, they're going to find out who I really am. They ain't going to want anything to do with me. But it was because I told them everything when they would ask me, is the reason that they accepted me. And it was all okay, so it's like we're a family now, in a sense. And so it, that's, so when I go up there, sometimes I'll be up there for 3 days or whatever, or a little longer or less. It's just, there's not a schedule.
Does time operate differently there? So if you're there for 3 days, is it 3 days here, like 3 actual days?
It's kind of funny. I use Zulu time now because I got so confused. That's uh,
Right.
world
Well,
time. And when I'm up there, a lot of times, like, I have my phone with me, and I'll have the timer and stuff on it, and or my time, and I can see 8 hours pass, right? But when I come back here, it's not always just 8 hours. It may be more or it may be less. So I stopped trying to figure it out. It's somewhat approximate, and so that's why I just went to Zulu time. But so no, it isn't different, but it is.
okay. I mean, yeah, because I've heard, I guess it really depends on where you're going and what plane of existence you're moving to. Because I've heard people will go somewhere for, let's say, 3 hours, but they'll be gone for 30 days or vice versa or whatever it is.
Hmm.
I think it's all possible and just depending on where you go. It's like frequency specific.
Yeah. I haven't experienced that big a gap, but it's usually within, decent time.
When you're up there, what does your physical body feel like? Is it the same? Do you feel lighter? Does your pain go away? Anything different?
Well, anytime you enter the ship, or exit the ship, you're like scanned, right? So they know what's going on with your body. We have, like, I don't know, thousands or millions of bugs on us, right? That live on us. And those are all knocked off of us, and they're replaced with the ones that are on the ship. And so that, you start to feel freedom there. Plus the gravity is a little lighter because they're used to a lighter gravity. I think it's lighter, where you feel lighter.
Hmm.
Anyways, that's the way I explain it. And it's not a lot, but I can notice a big difference. Like, I have two discs in my back that are in really bad shape and stuff like that. And I have no pain when I'm on the ship in that sense. The air, like, I can smoke my cigars. And it's non-effective to what's in the ship. It's like a cleaner or a filter. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, there's really, you wouldn't notice the difference unless there's something, like my backs or something.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. It only makes sense to me. We've talked about in the first episode the healing technologies and stuff and how they actually helped your shoulder but I guess it would be interfering with your process, your mission as a human to heal your whole body, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, are they involved or aware of our Earth politics?
Very little. They'll ask me questions at time. Like, one time I asked, because the Plejarens aren't really into contact, right? There are factions of it in limited areas, and it's usually children, which I've met some of the people that were young, and I also met older ones. But um, uh, basically, they don't really do the contact work. What was it? But I've worked with some people, some very close friends of mine that I've worked with for years, and they're having incredible experiences and things through some of the things that I told them they would help them. So, right, that Ron and Lisa Holt, that do that work, they've done it for years and years. So we got some pictures and stuff, but don't really share those.
Right. So, have you ever been in a ship where people on the ground like see a UFO and you're in it?
No, but what's funny about that is that, like, I asked them about that, and oh yeah, I wanted to tell about what the captain said too. But if they want to be seen, they'll be seen. Uh, if and there's natural law, right? You're not going to see them if they don't want you to see them. That sort of thing. So that's kind of funny. Ships, a lot of people try to identify ships with certain races. Well, the reality of it is they create the ships, design them all themselves for whatever purpose that they're using them for. So the only time you'll see a ship that's similar is like maybe like on the Plejarens planet, they have little jets that I like Star Wars, I think it is, that or they have where they fly back and forth as the fighter ships. They have kind of like ships like that just can run back and forth from islands that are free use. But they don't have no weapons on them or anything. They don't need weapons. But yeah, they got that. And then I asked the captain one time, what would it take for our consciousness to reach a point where you guys would consider us somebody to have contact with? And it wouldn't be just them, it'd be several different races. And he says, well, I think you're a long way from that. He thinks the fastest way was to make everybody rich, and then money would have no value. And so, if you had your needs and the food and a shelter and stuff, people just aren't inherently, they wouldn't just quit on life. They would
Mhm.
they would create art. They would, build things, which is what the Plejarens do. Because when they're born, they never go to school. What it is, they have like multiple parents, and they come out of I call it a test tube. It's not really a test tube, but they're grown within it, and they're made healthy if they're not, well, while they're in that state, and they flash light on them. They send certain tones to them, and then when they come out, they're nearly able to walk right away. And I would say like I'm bad at this, but maybe 2 or 3 year old type looking, right? But they're obviously their age is much different than ours. But anyways, what they'll give them is like a field of toys. This is a short version. They'll give them a bunch of toys, and the kids will actually gravitate to certain types of toys, which all these are like teaching toys. And so they feed them more advanced ones of the ones that they like, and they continue with that. And what it does is it becomes like we have kids that get addicted to playing games, right? Maybe even some adults, but they do the same with what their work is, and they love to work, and they just keep expanding. So if anybody ever asks me, well, what is their job? Well, it's really hard to say because it expands constantly. They may have a specialty that they started with, like maybe animals or study insects or something like that, but it expands in so many different ways for so many different things that they just do everything. It's amazing, and
Yeah.
they love to work. It's like their toy.
Yeah.
Their
It doesn't feel like work because they're loving it, right? And
Yeah.
that's the key. When a civilization, because right now we still have a world where people are working jobs they don't really like at all because they just need to make money to survive. So it goes back to that just trying to survive mode, right?
Right.
When you're stuck
Yeah.
in survival mode, you cannot thrive. You are stuck
No.
in this primal survival mode. You're always kind of in fight or flight mode, basically, right? But when you can get out of that, when you can have your basic needs met, and you can start doing what you truly love to do, what matches your authentic frequency, that's when the magic happens, right? When you
Yeah.
start having a whole civilization on that same page, on that level, that's when it really starts to bloom and thrive. I think we're getting there, but we're still in a very much a transition phase to get to that point
Right.
fully. But I think we're gonna get there.
Got to get our taxpayer dollars back first.
Well, we gotta get rid of all that nonsense. We
Right. I
gotta,
know.
get rid of
I know.
But
the
what you
money
see too is,
system and taxes and all that nonsense first.
but by following that process, they're doing it for the betterment of peoples, like all the races together. Like when they terraform
Yeah.
a planet, they'll go into this huge thing in about 8 days or so, where all these people get together trying to figure out how to use this planet, and natural law prevents them from making it anything that it couldn't do on its own.
Mhm.
And so what they'll do is they'll decide what types of species will most be able to use that planet when they take just a barren planet in a sense, and then what types of animals and species and all this, and they all collaborate together. It's kind of interesting because everybody's got their thing, right? And they bring that all together, and within about 8 days, they know what that planet's going to look like when it's completely terraformed, because they all work together. And that brings up an important point a lot of people are interested in. They ask me about like reptilians and stuff like that. I call them the bug people, right? The scary looking ones. And
Mhm.
there's so many humanoid looking people that's part of the realm, and the ones where I go mostly. And like they've described to me that they also, the bug type people, follow natural law. But the communication's so difficult because they really, in my opinion, are like insects on Earth, right? They have like a
Mhm.
hive mind, a lot of them, and they do things as like insects would here. And that's the kind of people I call the bug people, but they're completely harmless, and they share. Like if they go to harvest a planet, they'll take everything that they can without affecting the planet, but it will be more than what they need. But it's more efficient to take it all that that is available to them. And what they do is, since they don't need it all, they share it with the humanoid type beings. And one day it was kind of funny. I always like to tell this story because it kind of sums up a lot of things. They told me how, they will not hurt you, right? And I said, okay, I believe you. And they was like, you want to meet one? And I thought right away, I spoke before I thought. I said, sure, I would love to meet one of them, and just to have that experience, right? Knowing that there's no harm going to come, and my Plejarens people are here and stuff like that. And so I got that opportunity, and basically they moved me into this, the ship that they were in, and I was like face to face, like 3 feet apart. And if you've ever looked at a spider in a microscope and, seen that, I was petrified, even though I knew there would be no harm come to me or anything, just being in front of something so different than what I could imagine in my mind, right? That'd be the only place I could come up with what I was witnessing. And I was scared to death there for a moment. I didn't spend much time with it. But I think that tells a lot about, how we are and stuff. And
So
it's also, go ahead.
What was it exactly that you saw?
A bug
Like
being.
an insectoid? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Uh, Not sure where I was going from there, but
Sorry, I cut off your stream of consciousness there,
oh,
but
that's okay. You know, when you guys ask me questions, there's so many different directions that I could go, and I think, okay, well, let me tell them this part, and then I can go to this part or this
right,
part, and then by
Right.
then we're already into another subject. So
right,
that's why there's so many books so fast. You know, since 22, I got 10 on Amazon, 11's about to be, and then my editors will start with the other one. To write a book takes a very short period of time for me, but it's the editing and then going through the process, the barcodes, the copyright, all
Mhm.
that stuff, the edit, the final edit and stuff.
Yeah. Oh
right.
yeah,
It
that's
takes
a lot
long.
more work than you realize till you have to do it.
Yeah,
I
that
learned
takes
that.
longer than writing it, you know.
Yeah, it almost
So,
takes like the same amount of work as writing the book. All right.
Yeah.
so I want to ask you a very 3D question, and then I want to finish this up with getting into like what quantum love, like what you've experienced love is. With like Sam Jess and stuff. But 3D question, what role like okay, like the Trumps and Ivanka and Trump, like what role do they play in your opinion? Are they like serving the light? Is there any like have you had any insights on that? Do you think this is a good timeline with them in play?
You know, that's a funny thing. That's like a political question. And
Right.
I'll probably get in trouble and then other people will praise my opinion. But the experiences that I've had, like I've met other presidents and been involved within the government people uh, for many years and of my life. And I think Trump is what we have to have. I think because of what he's doing right now, shedding all this stuff. You can watch all, it's like a cockroach in a room when you turn the light on, everybody scattered and all of a sudden.
Mhm.
And they only do that because they don't want to be caught, right?
Right.
But I really believe in what he's doing, and it's about us. He's doing everything for us, the people.
Right.
So
Mhm.
anyways, that's what I see. I see that's love, in my
Right.
opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the way
Yeah.
when I agree with you, but the reason I brought up Ivanka is because when I look at her, she looks like how I would imagine a Plejarin. Like she looks
Or
so Pleiadian, so
Pleiadian or
ET, yeah, play. And I'm just like, is
Melania
there
too.
Melania
Melania
like,
too.
Yeah.
and I'm like, is there a connection there? Do they have a tie?
Right.
I
Maybe a
mean,
very distant relative.
right, right. But I feel that like maybe a distant relative, but I feel like there's some sort of I want to say power, but there's something there that some type of energy that they carry that I think is gonna like impact the planet if they're in the position that they're in.
Truth.
Yeah,
And they won't waver.
right,
Mhm.
Yeah. They're not the only ones, but there's never been the ability to get all of them in one place at the same time. I think there's been a lot of incredible people that, have been in our lives that we don't even recognize because they're surrounded by the swamp, I mean,
Mhm.
nasty people. We meeting those people is completely different than meeting a regular person. It really is. These people who have been embedded in government for so many years, they don't know what real life is.
right,
I got a great story
Yeah.
about that. When I was younger, I had this like a spot at a flea market and it did really well. I sold like sunglasses and watches, right? And it was just a part-time thing I had while I did other stuff. And I wanted to transfer it to one of my people who worked for me. And so I went to my lawyer and he was very high. He was right under the senator. And so I went into his office and asked him if he could write a contract, a change of ownership in the sense of a flea market space. And he didn't understand what a flea market was. And he goes, why do they have a market for fleas? And I mean, he was serious. And, so I tried to describe to him, I said, it's like a garage sale. He goes, people sell their garages. I mean, that summed it up for me, right? These
right.
people are so disconnected. They've been away from real life for so long, and I think that's what we're seeing now is people that actually have been in life, you know, that are
Right.
reflecting it. So
They're a part of humanity rather than this like complete separate like their own little club that only self-serves, right? Only
Right.
serves themselves and every at the
yeah,
expense of humanity. Now we're
yeah,
actually having leadership that's actually serving humanity, cleaning up all this nonsense, uh, you know, draining the swamp, like getting everything how it should be, and now we can move forward because we can't move forward with the old system with the way things have been. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
we're transitioning massively right now.
It's
Right.
kind of like Trump doesn't take a paycheck. I mean, they force it to him, but he gives it back into the system. And then Elon Musk, he's working for free. You know,
Yeah.
my team, all my team and volunteers, nobody's paid. I don't get paid. None of them get paid. You know, and look at what happens. Things change when
Right.
when you're in that position.
Well,
Exactly.
it's kind of like, well, you're doing something you're passionate about and you're creating
Mhm.
abundance. And it's really not about the monetary value, but that's, I loved what you said earlier about just make everyone rich so they don't care about money, right? Because I don't, you said there is no monetary value or system
No,
with Plejarens, right?
no.
Yeah. So, I mean, and they're like, so beyond that. So I think that's a great solution, actually, just to make, there's so much of an abundance of money to where it's like, okay, well, I don't need money now. What do I do? And you're going to be forced to create and do what you can always do. Once we're not suppressed
Yeah.
with all these and bombarded with all these poisons, which is going to get cleaned up inevitably, it's a process. There's an order of operations. It's not going to be overnight, but it has to start somewhere. And whether you agree with what's happening or not, I do think we're on the positive timeline.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to get into, you talk about like quantum love and like you and Sam just being one and like quantumly entangled and all this stuff. And like, I don't even know, like, how do they, this is might be a silly question, but like, how do they make love and how do they like, do they even like have intercourse like we do? Is there's complete something completely different? And like, what does that mean, for their civilization? Like, how did they experience that?
Well, it's kind of funny when I'm writing the book, right? Because love is expanded so much into my life and the understanding of what I know now and that how expansive its potential is, right? Because you can never be defined. And so the way a lot of people read it is different than what it really is, right? We are one person. We're just a different projection, right? And so
Mhm.
that's one thing. And like in their people, very rarely will they ever have actual sex. And when they do, it's usually once and then it's created. Once it's created, it's removed, which is the life can be considered, which I write in my book too, about how they had to like rewire, blend my hemisphere in a sense, in order to understand a lot of stuff that they would to teach me. And so they had to describe to me like the life begins within, I think is, I don't know, remember it was a very short period of time, 3 hours or 3 days or something like that. And it's actually ready. I think it's 3 days where the cells are generating a conscious being and it's removed from them. And then they put it in another thing. So as far as having actual physical sex, it's extremely rare. And it's done as a ceremony when it is done. So they just don't have sex. They do it, the insemination sort of way. I don't know how to describe it because it's somewhat similar to ours, but that would be the closest representation is they're inseminated in order to create the being and then it's removed from them and then put into a tube basically where they make sure that all the genetics are correct and everything. They don't change anything about the person's genetics other than remove anything that may contaminate it. So when that being is, out as a living being, then it's perfect because they've pretty much gotten rid of everything that would be harming in the DNA or in the genes. So it's very rare that there's anything that has to be altered, but that would be the only altering that they would do.
Wow. So I mean, that's probably why they're all so beautiful. I mean,
That would be why. Yeah.
right. They've removed, they cleaned up the gene pool and you know,
That's
a
it.
lot.
By the way, that's a common thing with ET contactees as well. They go, man, they were like they looked like a supermodel or they look beautiful. That's a very commonly reported thing with when people encounter ETs or insiders that have knowledge of like certain races. They're like, oh, and they're all beautiful. I've heard
Right.
that many, many times.
Well, I remember in the Sands of Times books, whenever they were talking about our government like interacting with some of these races, they were like actually mad at how perfect they were.
Right.
It
Right.
would piss them off because they're trying to like do a business deal with them and like their good looks would actually make them mad because uh
Right.
yeah. Um it's just been the way it was. But and for a while, whenever I would see the depictions of like Pleiadians and stuff like that, I wondered like, is this real, or are they just like trying to pull a fast one on us? Do they really look like this? Are they trying to sell us, some supermodel version of ETs? But the more you research and the more you like dig into this stuff, it turns out to be the case. Like that's or at least some of the groups,
Well,
right?
and then there's the ones that look like a gray type, and then there's insectoid and reptilian, and there's feline, there's all different varieties. But the ones that are more look like us, like human type, I guess you could say, usually that's the
So,
case, as far as I can tell.
right.
I've met
So,
so many species. I mean, I can't count how many species I've seen, and many of them look like us for the most part,
Mhm.
so, but there are many others that have different things, right? Large ears or something like that, or, some of them are completely different, but they're still humanoid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you also
um,
asked more about the love thing. The,
yeah.
love is very important. It's like when I go on the ship, it's like at first it was like, man, this is a pain. I had to go around and hug everybody. At first they didn't understand the hugging part. Plejarens did, but the people who worked on the ships and stuff like that were kind of disconnected from that. And so I introduced that to them. And now when I go on the ship, I have to hug every one of them every time, right? And say hi. And what they tell me is that that's where you catch up on the love that you've missed since the last time that you saw them. And another thing which is related to this, in a sense, kind of brings a lot of it together, is that, through a lot of the stuff that I've been doing, like with other people and things like that, and with them, um, uh, like when we get into the mind, right, then we can start to access, and each of us will find a different way, whether it be physical, which is the lowest form of contact, but then there's the mind and other things. So when you start to use the mind instead of the brain, you don't try to figure things out in the brain because it's going to come to you. You just have to experience everything you can about whatever is happening right at the moment. And like when you you meet somebody, like say you're in their mind and you're traveling and you come across and you think it might be a dream or something, when it's not, when you're actually traveling outside the body. First thing very important is to believe, and then to trust what you're seeing. And then what happens is the whole place opens up, right? And it's like a forest of all these really cool toys everywhere, like a kid in a candy store, right? Wait, don't go there. What you do is you find the first being or whatever it is that you have interest in, and go to that being and give that moment an entire eternity, because you can't calculate how long it's going to take. It's just like when I give them when I meet one of them and I have to give them a hug, or even outside of my family, when I meet one that I hadn't seen in a while or something, you give that all the time that it possibly needs. So you can't sit there and count or use a watch. Sometimes it'll take a really long time. Sometimes it won't take long at all. But that's the key to all of this. That's what will lead you further and further into whatever it is that you seek.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Yeah, like the hug can be an eternity. Yeah, in that moment, just like get lost in time. And
Mhm.
Yeah.
you made a good point too about like the brain and the mind and the heart and all that stuff. And it reminds me of like manifesting. And whenever you like when you manifest something, you have to ask yourself, like, where is that intention coming from? Is it like coming? Why do you want what you want? Is it coming from the brain? Is it coming from the heart? Like, we have to like determine where that desire or that need is coming from. And then when you set your intentions in life, you have to really like ask yourself, where is that intention coming from? I think that's something
Is it,
important also.
is it your ego because you want to
Right.
be perceived a certain way by people, status or whatever,
Right.
or is it truly coming from your heart and your core being, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, like you said, we create our life, right? We create our destiny. And I think the easiest way to sum that up is like when I talk about people and prayers, right? They'll sit down and they'll pray and they'll go on and on about what they want. And sometimes when the prayer is answered, they think that it's a miracle. And the reality is that every prayer is answered because you're creating your own destiny. But the
Mhm.
thing is that we can't complicate it. When we sit down to pray or something, we don't have to talk. you know, the other end of that, or whatever, the quantum or God or whatever it may be, when it's receiving exactly what you're feeling, it already knows that. So you don't have to say anything because they
Right.
already know. It's that you sat down to pray, right?
Right.
Or to meditate. That's the whole point. Just do that,
The
you know,
intention. It's
and
like
let
the
that stuff go. Yeah.
you're right.
And that's
Yeah.
how you're creating your destiny. And we just seem to complicate it because we're in the brain, right? The brain has to have reasons. It has to figure
Right.
things out. But all those things will take us way away from the truth. Where if you perceive things from the mind, you're just experiencing every moment, right? And you
Right.
don't try to figure things out like the pyramids. Oh, I don't understand this and I don't understand this. So we go on this quest with the brain trying to figure out what it is. It may be true, it may not be true. There's a lot of things that we'll never know, right? But if we're in the mind, what happens is you just grab that experience of what you got and hold on to it. And what's funny is that something will come up, whether it be an hour, a day, a week, a year, something will just come up out of the blue. And immediately you'll relate it to what it was that you were seeking, the knowledge, and you'll receive that knowledge. And plus it'll be pure. And then all that can be sent to the brain. Now the brain has a reference in order to put together a memory complete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Beautifully said. It's like, oh man, I just lost my train of thought now. Wow, that was weird. I was just gonna make a really great point and sound amazing. No. Um, okay, well, I guess it wasn't important, but it had something to do with setting an intention, and
I don't do that.
it
I
was
don't set any intentions because we already
oh,
inherently are carrying the intention.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great advice, but that's what I was gonna say. Um, as far as maybe I can't, I'm losing it right now, so I'm just not even gonna go there. So let's talk about you're gonna be speaking at our conference
Okay.
in May. We're very excited about that. I don't know what you plan on covering at the conference, if you're just going to go through the story, if you have a plan, or you're just going to get up there and let this, come through stream of consciousness. Regardless, we're very excited to have you. Did you have anything, like, can you give us a glimpse into what your presentation is going to be, or do you even know yet?
Sure. This is kind of funny. I swore I would never do a conference. I didn't want to be a part of that. And it's kind of funny. When you guys asked, it was like, wow, I guess I'd do that for them because I really like you guys. You guys are so much fun and everybody likes you guys and everything. I thought, why not? And then to this day, I really don't know what goes on at a conference or what I'll be doing, but I'm prepared to do anything. So you guys point and I'll click, right?
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. Well, you're
Just
going to
hanging
have,
out. It's just hanging out and having a good time and
yeah.
connecting with people. That's it.
And you're gonna have the stage for, up to upwards of 2 hours if you want to just get
Mhm.
up there and talk. I forget which evening I have you on the schedule, but yeah, you get to do whatever you want. So I'm sure you'll know exactly what to do in the moment, and it'll be
Oh yeah.
exactly what it's
Yeah.
supposed to be. And thank you for you know
And thank
saying
you so
yes.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're so excited to have you.
Oh, absolutely.
Honored.
I was ready to go from the moment you guys asked me. I just couldn't give you a definite answer in the beginning, so I had to wait till that was all in line so I don't have to cancel. So,
Right.
yeah, I'm all
Yeah.
in. Whatever you guys
Awesome.
want.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
well, that'll be, and for anyone who's just tuning in who missed the beginning, we host a conference every year in Grafton, Illinois, May 12th through the 15th. And if you want to come meet Zaysan and the rest of the wonderful speakers and come hang out with us and do the bonfires and the sky watches, and we have a lot of fun. I mean,
Mm,
it's just, it's so much more than just sitting there like a seminar. It's a whole community summer camp vibe, be out in nature. There's
nature. Yeah.
camping. I mean, it's everything. So. Come hang out, journeytotruth.online, grab a ticket, and if you can't make it for 4 days, you can get a 1 day pass. If you can't make it in person, buy a live stream pass. So thank you so much for joining us and coming back today. We really
Oh, no
appreciate
problem. Yeah, anytime.
it. Also, really quick, let everyone know your websites and where they can get the books and stuff.
For the website, it's thequestecss.org, but the easiest one to remember is the same thing as endingchildsexslavery.org. That's my website. It's got all the information on there, and I ask people to read the stories, the rescue stories, because I publish every one of the rescue stories, and it kind of gives you a feel of how we do things, why we're so successful at what we're doing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
And those links are in the description for anyone right below the video for anyone listening. We can't thank you enough for joining us. We're so excited for May. It's going to be here in what, 3 months, so we're right around the
Less than three
corner.
months.
Yeah, less than three
Yeah.
months.
Three and a half.
It'll be here before we know it.
Yeah.
Thank you all for tuning in. We love you. We can't do this without you. Go follow us on all the social medias or join our Patreon, sign up for our newsletter. And, we appreciate all the love and support we can get because we can give it right back then. And that's what this is all about. Until next time, have a great evening. Good night, guys.